Hello and welcome to Random Fandom FC, the podcast dedicated to talking about your club. Each week we talk to a new fan, understand how they found their club, what's been their highest high, their lowest low, and anything else we should know. Then we'll do a prediction for the next upcoming game, and I'll do a match review the following week, and then we'll rinse and repeat it all again. My name's Rob, an Arsenal fan living in the States, and I'll be your host. Okay, last week we had Chris on, Manchester City fan. He wasn't feeling very confident about the game at Everton. In fact, we both went for draws. And in actual fact, Chris will be pretty happy because he was wrong, and he was wrong in a good way. They won 2-0 at Goodison, and it was a bit of a late show. Looked like it was heading for a 0-0 draw. And then O'Reilly popped up with a goal in the 84th minute, and Kovacic wrapped it up in the 92nd minute. So despite everybody saying it's a terrible season for City, you'd be forgiven for thinking they were being relegated the way people are talking about them. Actually currently find themselves fourth, nicely positioned in the battle for the Champions League spots. I know they'd want to be higher, but right now they're really in the mix. I mean, it's crazy. We have Newcastle in third, City in fourth, Chelsea in fifth, Forest in sixth, and Villa in seventh. And they're all separated by 2 points. So the Champions League race is going to go down right to the wire. Okay, let's do something a little bit different this week. So, who are you and who do you support? Well, it's me. This podcast is pretty dependent on getting fans to come on to talk about their fandom. I was away last week. The kids had spring break. I didn't get anybody lined up. So I thought, well, what are we going to do? Well, a couple of you have been asking, well, Rob, you're hosting this podcast about how did people find their teams? How did you find yours? So we'll keep this a little bit briefer than a usual one, and it's just going to be me monologuing, so stick with it. Uh, yeah, there's a little lad, 6, 7 years old. Unfortunately, lost my father at that age, so I didn't have that kind of guiding force to push me towards supporting a certain club. We also moved house at that time as well, and it was there at my new school that I found what would go on to become a couple of my best friends, both called Andy. Andy Harris, Andy Ellis. And it was Andy Harris that kind of had the big Arsenal connection. His dad was an Arsenal fan, his brothers are Arsenal fans, and I just gravitated towards Arsenal's. And we both shared a favourite player at the time, Charlie Nicholas, the striker. My first real memory is the 1987 season, 1986, 1987, I think it was, where Arsenal got to the final of, what was it called then? Littlewoods Cup? The League Cup that's gone through a bazillion different names since. And Arsenal won 2-1. It was 2 goals scored by Charlie Nicholas after Ian Rush had put Liverpool 1-0 up. And I haven't double checked this, but I think there was some crazy stat at the time that every time Ian Rush had scored, Liverpool had never lost. So things weren't looking good, but cometh the hour, cometh the man. Charlie Nicholas equalised, and then 10 minutes before the end of the game, he grabbed another one. So I got to see Arsenal kind of win their first piece of silverware, and that was really kind of burnt into my brain. I was going to roll on to kind of my highest high then, but let's get the lowest low out the way first. Lowest low actually kind of is fast forward all the way to 2006. Arsenal made it to the Champions League final. It was such a crop of players. I just feel lucky enough to support them during that era of the Bergkamp and Henry, all those brilliant players, Perez, Lundberg, and the rest. And they made it all the way to the Champions League final. I was absolutely convinced we were going to win it. And then I don't even know how many minutes it was into the game. It almost feels like the first kick of the ball saw Jens Lehmann sent off. Oh man, he just bought. I think it was F2. He bought down just outside the box, and they put the ball into the net and scored. But because he'd given the red card, we kind of got away with that. So we ended up going down to 10 men, but at least we hadn't gone 1-0 down. Biggest regret there is it was Robert Perez that got sacrificed. I mean, what a player to be taken off, but we had to bring another goalkeeper on, so Almunia came on. And then in whatever it was, 5 minutes before half time, Sol Campbell rose like the proverbial salmon and headed us in front. And it's like, what is going on? We're 1-0 up against Barcelona in the Champions League final. This could happen. And of course, it's the hope that kills you. And the sliding doors moment of the entire game, I think, is Henri gets sent through on goal late on. It's got to be, I don't know, 65, 70 minutes, something like that. It's the type of finish we'd seen him do 100 times in his career. He's just going to open his body up and he's going to curl it into the bottom corner. But it was one of the most terrible finishes ever. He basically backpassed it to the keeper. And you just kind of knew in your gut at that point that something's going to happen now, isn't it? And it felt like it was straight down the other end and it happened. It probably wasn't. But Larson set up Etu to equalise. And from that point, it was like, oh, I'm not sure we've got another goal in us now. And it was only 4 or 5 minutes later, Barcelona with their tails up, sensing blood against 10 men, put another one in. Don't even remember who scored that. And then I don't really remember anything else after the final whistle. It was just numb. It was so close. The fairy tale of winning it with 10 men against Barcelona, of all teams. Yeah, that was an absolute gut punch. It probably is a little bit worse than the FA Cup final in Cardiff when we absolutely dominated Liverpool. I think it was Freddie Ljungberg had put us 1-0 up, and we were just coasting to another FA Cup win. And then Michael Owen decided to do the late show. Those two goals, that was pretty low as well. But I still pick that Champions League game as being the worst feeling ever, supporting Arsenal. Which I know sound, I should be happy that we made it to a Champions League final. There'll be lots of people that would probably kill to have that as their lowest low. But there it is. We can't change what we feel as fans, and that was my lowest low. The highest high. Uh, I was 14 years old, 1989. Um, we were away on holiday, camping somewhere. It might have been Minehead. It might not. We'll go with Minehead for now. I was sent to go and get fish and chips while my family were putting up the tent. And I went to this little van outside a pub, and the pub had the Arsenal game because it was a Friday night kickoff, 8 o'clock, I think. Arsenal against Liverpool, the two teams that could possibly win the title were playing at Anfield. Arsenal had to win by two clear goals. If they won 1-0, that wouldn't be enough. We'd be level on points, but we'd lose the title on goal difference to Liverpool. So we had to go to Anfield and do something that no team had done for like a bazillion years and win by two clear goals at Anfield. And I was in the line for the chip van, and I could see the game inside through the window, and the guy had it on the radio as well. And then bizarrely, for a chip van, they ran out of potatoes. They had to wait for a new batch of potatoes to come through and then actually get cut, sliced, and fried. So I had a long time waiting in line. I was far back in the queue for the chip shop. I remember this guy wheeling out of the pub. I could see it up on the screen. I knew something had happened. I could see Arsenal players celebrating, and the guy came crashing out of the pub. As Alan Smith has put Arsenal 1-0 up. He'd obviously had a few beers and he did a little dance and he went back inside. Um, and then it just seemed to carry on going forever and ever. And I hung around this van listening to the radio and watching the TV through the window, and they weren't quite in sync, but it's not going to happen. We're going to come all this way. We're going to finish level on points with Liverpool. We're going to beat them at Anfield, and they're still going to be the ones that lift the trophy. It was sickening. It was absolutely sickening. And then all of a sudden, the pitch and the commentator's voice and the radio goes up, and Arsenal, which I now know from listening back to the VHS that I watched to death a million times, Arsenal come streaming forward, and surely what will be their last attack, and it works its way up to Michael Thomas, charging through the defence. It's up for grabs now. Ball into the net. Grobbelaar beaten. Arsenal 2-0 up. Just bedlam. Absolute bedlam. The pub went mad. Arsenal fans came running outside cheering. The same drunk guy, well, drunker, but now celebrating. I'm there, just can't believe it. I'm just so happy. The next 90 seconds feel like 90 years, just waiting not to do something stupid and give away a goal. And we didn't. And we won the league. And we didn't even win it on goal difference. The 2-0 was enough to tie goal difference, and then it got separated by who'd scored the most goals. So Arsenal won it by scoring the most goals that season. Take the chips back to the family. My brother is a Liverpool fan. I tell him the score. He doesn't believe me. This is in the dark ages before the internet. He couldn't look it up and prove it. And because it was a late night game, when we went to the campsite newsagent the next morning, they only had the early editions, for anybody who remembers those. They only had the early editions of the newspaper where the game hadn't finished when they'd had to submit the copy. So they didn't know the score on the newspaper. So my brother still doesn't believe me. There's no way you guys won the league. You're just trying to tease me. So we had to wait until whenever it was, 11, maybe 12, when the mid-morning copy of the newspapers came out. And there it was, just both glory for me and devastation for him. I can't say that he enjoyed that week, but even to this day, even to this day, that is highest high, absolutely burnt on my brain. I've been lucky enough to support Arsenal through a number of titles, FA Cups, etc. But that is the one. That is the absolute one. Um, One that's probably a little bit more recent, which I still remember because I was just waiting for the absolute grief I was going to get at work, is 2014 FA Cup final against Hull. Everyone's just basically saying this is a walk in the park for Arsenal. They're going to absolutely steamroll Hull. It's going to be like 4-5-0, whatever it's going to be. And then the unthinkable happened in the first 8-9 minutes. Hull scored twice. It was 10 minutes in, and Arsenal are 2-0 down to Hull in the FA Cup final. There's just no way that Hull should be doing this. No disrespect to Hull, but Arsenal are firm favourites, and I'm like, oh my gosh, no, it can't. This just can't happen. And then so it began. The wizard himself, Santi Cazorla, slammed an amazing free kick in about 20-ish minutes. Absolute peach of a goal. And then we did what Arsenal do. We laboured away for a very long time, looking like we were going to get the next goal, but Hull just looked like they were just going to dig in and see it out. And then we got within about 20 minutes of the end, and Koscielny equalised. Game went into extra time, and then the Welsh wizard, Aaron Ramsey, pops up in, I think it was the first half of extra time. Absolutely brilliant goal, great team goal. Resulted, I think it was a little fancy little back heel from Giroud. I mean, what a little combination of players we had then. That team should have probably done a lot better than it did because I think there was Rosicky and Wilshere and Cazorla and Özil, Ramsey. Just a great little team. But the back heel by Giroud to send Ramsey away that just struck it in. Oh, did not want penalties, and that's another one that kind of really sort of sits on my brain as being kind of those moments where you just don't think your body can probably create any more adrenaline. Jumping around like a crazy fool. I think I've said on previous pods, I do have a bit of a soft spot for the FA Cup. And if we think back when I talked to other guests about kind of players along the way, as an early lad, David Rocastle, what a player. Absolutely superb. But it was Paul Merson who was the poster on the bedroom wall. I loved Merce. I loved the way George Graham seemed to have a setup where we'd have maybe like 10, 8, 9, 10 sort of functional players, if you like, and he would allow one, maybe two players with flair in his side. It was the classic 1-0 to the Arsenal. It was either David Rocastle doing something in his era, then, we had Paul Merson, we had Anders Limpar. We always kind of had one or so that was kind of that got your the hair on your neck stood up when they got the ball. You were waiting for something to happen. So yeah, in those early years of supporting, it's probably those Merson and Rocastle were really kind of my favourite players. And kind of the Premier League era kicked in, and it was all okay. It was just a bit boring. Never really seemed to threaten the upper end of the table again after we'd had those two titles in '89 and 1991. It just all got a bit drab. And then all of a sudden, we had a revolution. We hired somebody who we only hired because their name sounded like the club. We brought in someone called Arsene Wenger that nobody had ever heard before. He'd been Monaco manager and somewhere in Japan. And we were all a bit gutted as a fan base. One of his early signings, and I might have this wrong, but one of his early signings was like to bring in this AC Milan reject that couldn't get a game for AC Milan, this guy called Patrick Vieira. And we all wanted that money spent on Jason McAteer because Jason McAteer was great. Oh my gosh, what little we knew as to what was about to happen. He built on the foundation of Bruce Rioch had come in after George Graham and had given us the gift of Dennis Bergkamp, one of the greatest players I've ever seen wear the shirt. And from there, we just had 4 or 5 years of just sublime football. That was, like I say, Thierry Henry, Dennis Bergkamp, Perez, Lundberg, Vieira, Gilberto. We just boiled at that point, and we'd also just had the era we had Ian Wright, right, coming in and breaking the goal scoring record. I always feel a bit sorry for him. He'd broken Cliff Baston's record that had stood for eternity, scored a huge number of goals for Arsenal. And then it literally took Thierry Henry, it felt like a blink of an eye to go and set the record again. But I'm sure Wrighty doesn't care. But What a crop of players. Then, of course, we had the one that keyboard warriors online, whether you're an Arsenal fan or you're not, always like to debate around this one is the Invincible season. Oh, yeah, but you drew so many games. So, you didn't set the points total, highest ever points total. So, you've only got to finish 1 point above the person in second, or, as 89 proved, better goal difference. So, who cares what points total you set? The very fact that I don't think any team since Preston North End in the late 1800s or early 1900s had ever done this is what made it stand out for me. Every year, somebody wins the Premier League. Every year. But never before had anybody gone through it unbeaten. Did we ride our luck? Massively. Oh my gosh, when Nistelrooy hit the crossbar with the penalty, or Robert Perez's when he was fouled against Portsmouth in inverted commas for the penalty that drew us level. That was never a penalty; it was a dive. But you've got to have the luck go with you sometimes. You've also got to be very, very, very good. And Arsenal were. It was an absolutely amazing season to go through. And you should never have regrets, I don't think. But the move to the Emirates is always tinged with a little bit of what if ism for me. Could we have gone on and had an era like the Sir Alex Ferguson era, a dominating era of winning more and more and more Premier Leagues and maybe going on and winning the Champions League if we'd have stayed at Highbury? Maybe. It felt like we were in debt on the stadium for a long time, so we had to cut our cloth accordingly, and it didn't feel like that group of players hung around for very long. Again, could be my memory playing tricks on me, but it felt that very quickly we were transitioning to youth-based team where we were trying to find kind of the next gem, and we did. We had Fabregas come in, Jack Wilshere, but it was always kind of this periodic little gems wrapped around by not so great players, players that we loved but just weren't top level. And that's where I think probably the running joke came from us treating the top four like a trophy because I don't know that the team had the investment to challenge for the title. So keeping that team in the top four was an amazing achievement to keep bringing Champions League money each year. And for everybody that mocked that, well, then after towards the end of Wenger's reign and afterwards, early on, the fact once we started falling out of that, it was such a difference where you were no longer listening to the Champions League music. You're no longer looking forward to those Tuesday and Wednesday nights. All of a sudden now you're scrapping over seventh, eighth, ninth in the table and thinking, well, are we even going to get into Europe this year? It was just, you have to be careful what you wish for. People were slating Wenger for not taking the team where he could have done, but then suddenly we started getting an era where it's like, oh, are we just going to fall into mid-table obscurity here now? Are we ever going to get back up again? Emery for me was a case of right man at the wrong time. I think he's a brilliant manager. I just think anybody that came in right after Wenger, the same way that people came in after Sir Alex Ferguson, it was just going to be difficult to come in and pick up after a kind of a 20-year management campaign like that. And it just didn't pan out for him. It could have been, got us to the Europa final, didn't win that. Results in the league fell away. We didn't get in there, and suddenly they decided to go with Mikel Arteta of all people. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was like, well, okay, yeah, they want to pick an Arsenal man, a man that's played for the club, captained the club, bring back the kind of sense of connection between the fans and the team because it felt like a bit of a divide had come in there. The stadium was quiet. There wasn't really kind of the rapport with the team. It was all in disarray. We had this hodgepodge squad of random players like David Luiz and other people that had just been picked up to just do a job. There was no sort of sense of uh, a tactic or a vision or anything. And I'll be honest, I didn't see Mikel Arteta being the one to address that. And I'm massively wrong. All I wanted to see was year on year improvement. And that didn't necessarily mean winning anything. It just meant do a little bit more than you did the previous season. Keep increasing your points total. See if we can get back towards being in the Champions League. We absolutely blasted through that because he's gone and won the FA Cup in his very first season or end of the first season, whenever it was, in 2019, 2020. And then incrementally just kept increasing the points total, kept increasing the points total, really started to get a collection of players that seemed to understand his philosophy and were actually exciting to watch again. Actually looking forward to watching an Arsenal game where we might go on the attack and beat teams rather than just waiting for us to mess up. Built us around a rock of Saliba at the back. Odegaard, beautiful footballer in the middle of the field, bringing people like pushing people like Saka into the forefront. I know he was there before, but really kind of making him a star in the making, and having Martinelli and just complementing and growing. And every transfer that seemed to come in seemed to be in the right direction. Yeah, there'd be some questionable ones that would come in. You're like, Willian, really? Raheem Sterling, really? I mean, they all kind of made sense to some degree. I'm not sure that we all really loved them as fans, but it's just gone in the right direction. And you know what? I've been putting up with people for the last couple of years going, oh, yeah, you've been the biggest chokers, though. You've lost the league the last 2 years running. You're going to lose it this year to Liverpool as well. Like, so I would so much rather be in the title conversation and looking at the calendar to look at the run in to work out where we might pick up points or where our opposition might drop points than be sat in eighth or ninth, not really caring about the run in because we can't really go up and we can't really get pulled down into anything either. I wouldn't swap it for the world. It's been brilliant being part of the title conversation again. Do I think we need to win it for Arteta to be kept? Maybe we do. He's got to start adding some silverware soon. You can't just keep on good faith, goodwill. Um, Probably a striker away from being a really good squad. That is something we miss. Be interesting to see what happens this summer and see if we can take that step, try to wrestle the title off Liverpool, who are gonna win it later this week or whenever it is. I'm sure they'll beat Spurs and that'll be that. And I'll applaud them for it. People are saying, oh, they've only won the Premier League this year because they were on for the quadruple and they've only won the Premier League. Like only come on, have a word with yourself. It's the hardest thing to win to be consistent for 38 games. All top competitions have got way less games and maybe the odd slice of luck that gets you through to a final. But the Premier League is hard. So for Arsenal to be up there with points totals, like last year, Arsenal's record ever points total, and it still wasn't enough to beat the machine that was Man City. Yeah, I was disappointed, but oh, what a ride! Loved being part of that whole feeling. Yeah, so that's my backstory. That is how I fell in love with Arsenal. Those are my highest highs and lowest lows, and some of my favourite players along the way. Really hope that this time next year I am actually celebrating a title win or maybe one of the other trophies. I'm also hoping that this season might see the Champions League come our way, but I don't know. Some people are saying that we've done it now that we've beaten Real Madrid, but I think Paris might have a little word about that. And then there'd be the small matter of the finals. So, as the old cliche goes, one game at a time, and let's not go ahead of ourselves. Um, and if you'd like to come on the pod so that people don't have to put up with me monologuing, then this pod is fully dependent on you guys getting involved. I need people to come on and talk about their fandom. It doesn't matter which team it is, what league it is. Doesn't matter if the highest high is a favorite goal because your team's never won a trophy. It doesn't matter. It's all about the personal journey, how you fell in love with your team, and what's been the stories along the way. So please, please, please get in touch. Or if you listen and you've been on, or you listen and you don't fancy coming on, but you've got friends down the pub or friends that support teams that you think would come on and do it, then please send them my way because I'd love to keep this thing rolling and chat to some more fans out there. So until next time.